forward? Yep. Okay, great. So thank you everyone for attending on September 17th, 2020, as we go through our COVID season of Pelagic meetings. This presentation is done by Wisch. She's a liveaboard aboard the boat Heaven. She's a writer, editor, photographer, sailor, veteran life liveaboard, currently living on Heaven with her cat Lily in Boston Harbor. When she's not sailing, you'll find her with a sander, can of varnish, doing various boat works, and has her business, Alley on a Boat. She's known for her work as a managing editor of Sail Magazine, Multihull Sailor, and New Boats and Gear, when she works fairly obsessively on her boat. She does a lot of things on the water, catching lines on the dock. She has numerous certifications from the ASA and the Offshore Sailing School, and we are very pleased to have her be able to present tonight. So without any further ado, I'd like to present to you Wisch. Allie, take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. Is this working okay? Okay, yep. Wonderful. If there are any issues, let me know. If I'm talking weird, let me know. I only have one ear that's working right now. Let me get my screen share going. Okay. One moment. Okay, how's that working?
Perfect. Good.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for having me. I was a little intimidated after I listened to some of the past speakers, although I know Brad kind of well, but I'm really grateful to be able to share some info with you about living aboard. This is a cute little thing, COVID related. One of the nurses at my marina put little masks on all her flamingos. Okay, so here is a view of my marina. I just wanted to say I really, really appreciate this opportunity. From what Chris didn't share with you, I got into sailing when I was pretty young. My grandparents used to sail a couple of different days, and we went out often on the Chesapeake. But I didn't get involved like a lot of my friends. My parents didn't like have me on sunfish, and I wasn't in lessons, and I actually didn't really learn anything from these experiences except maybe just my love of the water. As I got older and especially after I moved aboard, I got really, really into sailing, and it came to encompass my entire life very, very quickly. I saw people living aboard boats in East Boston. I thought it was cool. I liked the minimalist lifestyle. It seemed pretty unique, and I just wanted to be on the water. And from there, it went to working on my boat, to working for Boston Boat Works, building MJMs, to becoming the editor for Sail Magazine, and now I'm doing my own business and mostly boat deliveries. Me sailing my boat Heaven. So a lot of people ask me why I do this. Financially, it was a big part of it. I can't afford an apartment and a boat slip, so if I had to choose one or the other, I obviously chose the slip. My first winter living aboard, I was caretaking for a family that lived on a Pearson 365. They were in Costa Rica for the winter. It was the winter of what we called the snowpocalypse or snowmageddon. I think it was 2013, 2014. The harbor froze, everything broke. I had to have an emergency appendix removal. I got carbon monoxide poisoning. And after all that, I was like, yes, this is the life for me. This is what I want to do. So this is one of my favorite boats about sailing. So this is what people often think that I'm doing when I'm on deliveries, when I'm hanging out on my boat in summer. It looks pretty nice, and it's not like this isn't part of it. It is. But this is what my life is mostly like. That's Holly Scott, one of my sort of idols, helping me work through a problem in my bilge. I'm not sure if you're familiar with no-see-em bites, but they're kind of the worst thing ever. And I spent one 8-hour shift on watch trying to count how many I had. I gave up after I reached like 100 at my ankles. That's just normal. I have no idea where that came from. It's moving around the boat. That was when I found out I had to have the appendix removal emergency. I wasn't at sea. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Andy Schell. He wrote a great article about having to get like helicoptered off his boat while he was on a delivery for the same thing. I was at the marina, but this isn't the first time I've been in this situation off of a sailboat. So this is the boat I currently live on, Heaven. It's a 1981 Catalina 30. This is one of the few times I've taken her out. I have an Atomic 4 gas engine original that has never fully functioned. I've only gotten out of my slip by getting towed out, sailing, probably to Peddocks or George's or somewhere close, and then usually an emergency tow back into my slip. Luckily, it hasn't had to be through Sea Tow or Boat US yet. It's another view of Heaven. So this is what my boat looked like the day I moved into it, which was, it's the cleanest it'll ever be. This is the galley area. People often ask me like, how do you eat on your boat? Can you cook on your boat? Like, my friends and I joke that people either think we live in a canoe or on a mega yacht, and there's actually a nice in-between place, and that's what I think Heaven, this version of Heaven is like. So I have a stove, I have an oven, I have refrigeration and a freezer, sink, so fully functioning galley. Well, I shouldn't say, okay, well, the oven and the stove aren't working right now, but usually it's fully functioning. This is a view of the salon. The TV I have so you can unmount it when you're sailing and just usually shove it in the quarter berth, which I also refer to as the hole. It's the V berth. This is the head, the thing I'm most happy about. My boat before this didn't have a head, so I used a camping toilet. This is a big improvement. So this was, I had a bad leak on my boat, and it happened to get all over lots of important paperwork. So that's me drying it all out. That was when my water tank overflowed at like 2 in the morning. I was filling my water tanks at 2 in the morning, and I had to vacuum it out and then dump my shop vac overboard. It probably took 2 hours, and I have much stronger thighs because of it. That's when I was trying to find where a leak was coming from. So as you can see, there's a pretty big spectrum from clean to messy, and it happens very quickly. That was cleaning the lazarette. Okay, and then people often ask me the difference between living aboard in summer and living aboard in the winter. And I kind of explain to them it's like sailing. Like sailing in the summer is less stressful. More of your friends are around, like problems don't seem as bad because it's warm and the sunsets are pretty and the sun is out later. Living aboard in the winter is kind of like sailing in the winter. It's a little less comfortable. Problems seem a little bit more dramatic. It's harder to solve them. And one of the questions that Chris sent me in preparation was why do people live aboard in the winter? And I was like, that's a really great question. And the first thing that came to mind was the community. The live aboard community in the winter is much more tight knit than in the summer. I also like a challenge and problem solving. I wouldn't do it if it was, well, I would do it if it was easy. That would be nicer, but I don't mind that it's not that easy. And it's a lot cheaper to live on your boat in the winter as well. This was a mistake. I should have shrink wrapped earlier. We also had a very early snow. So there were a couple days where I was basically inside I'd open the companionway to come out and just close it and go back in. So I'll talk a little bit about shrink wrap. I've had a lot of people that have asked me because they don't understand why we do it. There are a number of reasons. There's the greenhouse effect where it basically keeps your boat warm. You're protecting the deck from moisture. It's basically a necessity if you're going to live aboard in the Northeast or any colder climate in the winter. On the left, that's both shrink wrapped at Boston Shipyard and Marina, which was the first shipyard I lived at. On the right, you have Charlestown Marina, which is near Pier 6, just around the corner from Constitution, where I currently live. That's the gangway. So at Constitution, they shrink wrap over the gangway, which is really helpful. However, you still need to be really, really careful when walking down the docks or the gangway. It came as a surprise to me when a bunch of friends and I were talking about whether or not they've fallen in. And I would say like 90% of the people I know have fallen in at one time or another. And 50% of those situations have been in the winter. Usually in a group scenario, you can get someone out quick enough. This is my boat, my current boat shrink wrapped. So people also ask how I get on and off. I have steps and a door. It's kind of like walking into a house or an apartment. This is a previous boat of mine. So similar situation, but different shrink wrap structure. We like to spend a lot of time trying to sort of create different shapes and what the right angle is so the snow doesn't pile up too much, but also the most important thing is that you can walk along the sides so you can fill your water tanks, and also they can get there to pump out your boat. This is a view under the shrink wrap of one of my boats. This was designing one of the frames. This was the boat I had before Heaven. This was that shrink wrapped version. So if you see the zipper there, that was my door for that year. You live and you learn. That was the view from under it. So heat, people ask about this a lot too. Aside from the shrink wrap, diesel heaters, this was a wood burning heater. I ended up removing it from that boat. It had a hornet's nest in it, actually. And I think it's a little bit dangerous, but they're pretty popular. Essentially, all of your heating options are going to be dangerous. You have to be really careful and pay attention to your heat sources. There's Lily. So I typically use electric mainly because I haven't been able to save up enough money to buy like a Webasto heater, which is what I would love to do. The big thing financially is in the winter, you're charged for electric. In the summer, you're not. So maybe it makes more sense to invest in air conditioning than in heating. But that was a very kind friend of mine visiting. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see that we have a propane heater. I recommend those only to be used in the cockpit or not at all. They're very dangerous. This was when I was re-insulating one of my Vibras. So I used a spray foam and then went over it with Reflectix and then re-put all the slats back in. That made a huge difference. And I think insulation is the most important thing you can do, and the thing you should do first before you start testing out your other heating options. Also, for those of you that don't know, Milwaukee makes a heated jacket and a heated sweatshirt, and it runs off of my drill battery. So I found that to be extremely helpful. And yeah, I spend most of my winter indoors and outdoors with that heated jacket on. Living aboard in the summer is, like I said, a little less intense. This was out at Petix Island. That being said, it can get really hot just as easily as it can get really cold in the winter. So I have probably 10 fans on my boat, and until I, blow a circuit, I'll have them all running. Also, we tend to bring lots of floats and raft up out of the islands. The fishing is great in the summer. This was the only time I've seen a shark like this. I wouldn't really recommend the meat, but everyone should try something once. And boat projects. Another prompt that Chris had said is, what do you need to know before you live aboard? You'll never know enough. I mean, essentially, you're not just a sailor. You could be a great sailor, but you also have to be a mechanic, an engineer. You have to be able to deal with every system. You have to be able to repair sails. Sometimes you're doing your shrink wrap yourself. Sometimes this was rebedding all of the port lights on one side of my boat. So you're constantly learning. I think it's never too soon to start though. And I know some people disagree with this theory, like you should know more before you move aboard. I did it the opposite way. I learned as I went, and I really don't think there is a right way or a wrong way. I think if you're thinking about doing it though, do it. So it's an ongoing joke. One project turns into another project, which turns into another project. For example, I'm like, oh, I'll vacuum my rug. And then I'm like, oh, I moved my rug. So I guess I'll just check my bilge. Oh, okay. I guess it's looking a little dirty. I'll clean the entire bilge. Oh, maybe I'll replace the, so it goes like that. That's where I often am. That's the daily life of the liveaboard. Or up there. Some people feel nervous about having to climb up the mast or think maybe it's a requirement for living aboard. It's not. The biggest part of the whole thing is the community, so there's always somebody who will help you with something. I'm not even sure if that's my boat. But it's if you're afraid of heights, it's okay, someone will help you. This was a recent delivery I did from Cape back to Boston. And this was the first delivery I did from Annapolis to East Boston in March with no heat. It was a pretty crazy adventure, but that's what I've got for you. Chris?
Fantastic. Now we'll open it up. Anybody have any questions for Allie about her experience and what it's like to really be a liveaboard? You can unmute yourself.
Why not move south for the winter?
It's a great question. I'd love to do that. My boat isn't really offshore worthy. So personally, I'd either need to get a new boat, get a new engine and make some serious repairs, get new sails, have the rigging. I'd probably have to have the standing rigging completely replaced. Also, I enjoy like seeing how far I can push it, and living aboard in Boston in winter is a struggle, but a good one.
How far south have you traveled?
I would say Tortola and the BVI probably. So the deliveries I've done have mainly been between Boston and the Exumas, Tortola to Fort Lauderdale, Tortola to Newport. Those are the longest ones. Then I've done Annapolis to Boston and all of like the Cape area, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket.
Do you take crew when you do deliveries?
Oh, I am crew on the deliveries. So yeah, it's always been, I shouldn't say always, there was one big delivery I did with just the captain and myself. That was rough. That was 8 hours on, 8 hours off shifts. But usually there's 2 to 4 people.
For your dream boat, how much would it cost to get a reasonable boat that you could sail south and live on comfortably? And what would it include?
That's a great question. I think you could get a decent offshore boat if you're willing to make some repairs yourself for the cheapest, probably like $15,000. They say boats grow on trees, and I really believe that's true. I mean, the boat I had before this, someone gave me for $1. So, but it didn't have a head or, you know, refrigeration. I was living in basically a hull. I think ideally, if everything was perfect, between $50,000 to $100,000. And I would also recommend getting a boat that was ready to go instead of a project boat, because the projects pile up anyways. What that would include for me would be as good of a set of electronics as you can get. You want to have a wind vane essentially. You want autopilot. One of my favorite authors and sailors, John Krushmer, said like the 2 most important things you need on your boat are an autopilot and a backup autopilot. And I agree with that. I have done deliveries where the autopilot's gone out, and steering for 8 hours in the rain, it's not so much fun. So that's important. You want to make sure that the boat is ocean worthy. So like the standing and running rigging, you want to make sure the sails are in good condition. You want to make sure you have a good mainsail, probably a backup mainsail, a sail repair kit. You want, you know, a jib, Genoa Code Zero if you can afford it. You want a storm sail. You want to make sure that obviously you would check all the sea caps and all of that anyways. But yeah, for me, you want a heavy boat. You don't want to be in a rush. The main reasons that my Catalina I don't think is safe enough to take offshore are because of the size of the companionway. I feel like if I got flooded, it could very easily flood the boat. I think some of my deck hull joints aren't strong enough, and like I said, there's a number of other reasons. So.
What's the biggest storm that you've lived through on the boat?
Like the scariest?
What's the highest winds, I guess, you've sailed through it with?
There have been a few. I can't tell you exactly how high the winds were, but I can tell you that on my first delivery from Annapolis to Boston, where we ran aground once, well, each time it was very, very bad. But we got stuck in some kind of squall and the engine overheated, the boat filled with smoke. Most of the crew had no idea what they were doing, and it was really bad. Also recently, on the delivery from Tortola to Fort Lauderdale, I think we were somewhere off of Cuba. We were in the middle of a huge lightning storm. But with lightning, there's really only so much you can do. I mean, there are things you can do to prepare. Yeah, there have been plenty of high winds, sort of nerve-wracking experiences. But as long as you trust the boat and you trust the crew, you've done all you can do.
Allie, are you happy? You have a Catalina 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have pressurized water
Mm-hmm.
and hot water?
Yes.
Okay, so and a shower?
Yes. So I put a mount in, and I'm short, difficult for taller people, but for me, I was able to mount it so I can shower in that, but I don't have a separate shower stall. But I do have pressurized hot water. I just have to remove anything that can't get wet from the area.
Yeah. And the nice thing about a Catalina 30 is a small enough area you can insulate and heat relatively economically. But are you looking at 2-foot IDIS? Moving up another couple of feet or something like that? Or are you happy where you are?
I have the same play that all sailors do, you know, but it's not about size for me. I started off with a ton of Vancouver 42, and then I got a Pearson Vanguard 33, and now I'm on a Catalina 30. So I sort of took the opposite trajectory of most people. That being said, if I could, I'd get a Hans Christian 33 probably, or a Choi Lee, or something like that. Yeah. But a big, go ahead.
And get a working diesel engine?
Yeah, my last boat had no interior, but it had a great Westerby. So can't win them all.
What's the
Can you tell us-
demographics of the folks who are living there? What's the age group that lives in Constitution Marina?
So it varies. I would say the youngest people are in their early 20s, and then it ranges to people in their 80s. Most people, I would say, are between 40 and 70. And then there's a smaller group of us that are in our 30s. Also, it ranges from people that work on boats professionally to we have people that are, you know, nurses and accountants and musicians, and it's just like you'd find in an apartment building, basically. You know, there's a little bit of everyone.
We had a member, a former pelagic member, Betty O'Connor. Is she still in Constitution?
She's at Constitution in the winters. I believe she goes to Admiral's Hill in the summer.
How
Still
large
on
a community is
Plan
it?
B.
How large a community is it? And does everyone, the non-sailor working on boat people, what do they have to know about living on a boat? I mean, do they need to maintain their own boat, or how does that work?
No, they don't need to know. I can speak for Constitution specifically, where there's a really, really good group of resources, and there's someone who can fix basically anything for you. People that I've watched move aboard over the past couple of years that didn't know anything know more than me about certain things now. You know, it's the learning curve isn't too steep. It's, you know, when you're living on your boat, you're working on it all the time. Like, you're constantly paying attention to what's going on. So there's no prerequisite, I would say, aside from getting a bunch of Don Casey and Nigel Calder books and watching some YouTube channels.
So you're happy living there? You're not looking to move to East Boston or down to the Cape or down to Rhode Island or something like that?
I am happy there. I want to move to St. Croix, but you know, I've done, I think, 6 winters aboard, and I love it. But like, one of the first questions, why am I living there in the winter? Especially with COVID, I've been asking myself that too. I think I'm sort of having the same cabin fever as everyone else. That being said, the marina has been a really great place to be during COVID. I just feel safer there, and maybe it's just a placebo effect thing, but because we're sort of in our own little community,
It's your own family.
yeah, and people respect and protect each other, and there haven't been any cases there yet. So,
That's good.
yeah.
Oops. Hi, I have a question. I lived on D-Dock for a couple of summers and had a couple of friends that lived there in the winter. I'm happy that they now cover the companionway. The gangway. It was really hard to go up to the bathrooms in the past when I was there. Do you have a community room now? I was there during the time that it was just the floating box on the water, on the dock. Do you have an inside room now that you can go to? I mean, with COVID, I know you can't, but in the past, were you able to meet inside?
So we don't have a community, like East Boston has a room, an area where people can sort of hang out inside. There is the office area before COVID where a few of us and people would come in and out and sort of socialize. The pool, the deck, the grill area is very social. And one of my favorite parts, I'm not sure what will happen this winter, was that every Friday night they also shrink wrap our tent around the pool, and every Friday night it's a hot tub party. And by party, I don't say that lightly, but it's a really nice little addition. So maybe not the same common area you're talking about, but there are. Yeah.
So I missed how many people are there now. Are they just using the inside docks, or are they out as far as D-Dock now?
Yeah, I'm on E-Dock actually.
Oh, wow.
How are the wakes out there?
What's that?
How are the wakes and waves out there?
I'm on the inside of E-Dock, so it's not as bad. The outside can be pretty rough. With the bridge construction, it's been a whole other thing. We've been in constant contact with the contractors, trying to, have them not start jackhammering before like 5 a.m. The wakes can get pretty bad. But from my experience, living on a mooring, obviously, and also East Boston, I had more stuff fall off the shelves. I don't think that's not true. Occasionally I've had 1 or 2 things fall off a shelf. And we joke though, somebody will go speeding past the marina and then the Coast Guard will go speeding after them. And often the Coast Guard's wakes that are also affecting us, and it's no disrespect to them. They're amazing, but it's a difficult problem to solve.
Do you find that you sail your boat less now because you're living on board than you would if you lived someplace else and had a boat just for sailing? Or do you have other friends that you just go out with?
I mostly go out with other friends. It's mainly my engine issue. Or no, it's entirely my engine issue. But it is easy for people to turn their boat into just a home on the dock. I think I've had a lot more opportunities though being there. So when people are going out, need help bringing their boat somewhere, they're just headed to, spectacle for the day. I don't think if I was in an apartment on land, people would be like, oh, hey, I want to come quite as much. And so I've gotten to sail a lot more because of that.
I have to say your talk is making me think I should move out of my home and back on a boat. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that was, the goal. I think it's a great lifestyle.
Allie, I have two questions. One, my name is Robin. One question is about Lily. Did Lily ever catch a mouse or a rat?
On land, yes. At the marina, no. It's been an interesting experience with Lily. It's been sort of trial by error. I had her and another cat, Henry, on 2 other boats until it became too much with the projects, and then they went to live on land with family for a couple of years. Now she's back, but they each fell in the water once.
Oh.
I didn't see it happen either time. They showed up on the boat soaking wet. She went missing for about 10 days under the docks in East Boston, but again showed up. She's not great with, occasionally we have a spider. She's not helpful in that situation, unfortunately.
And my other question is about mold. Do you have a battle with mold or? Oh, I hate to hear that.
I do. Yeah, I mean, I want to be totally honest about the good and the bad. I've had to throw out like lots of stuff, even in the past couple of years, because I'm lazy maybe and I don't insulate. You have to be really careful when you insulate because you will get a lot of moisture. It can be avoided, particularly if you put more time and effort and money in than I did. But on a day-to-day basis on the boat, my stuff doesn't have that like boat smell. It's pretty easy to, you can have a work wardrobe and go to work in the back bay and come back to your boat. And it's really no different than going from your house to your office.
Do you think because you're showering on board that you're getting more moisture?
I don't shower on board all the time. It depends how much of a rush I'm in. Usually I'll go up to the bathhouse. I don't think it makes a huge difference. I think you're gonna have a lot of moisture no matter what.
Yeah, I was curious because you're shrink wrapped too, so it doesn't have anywhere to go.
Well, you can, one thing about the shrink wrap that's great is you can put in the zipper that I had for a door. You can make zipper flaps that open and close.
Mm-hmm.
People also put like clear plexiglass windows in. So yeah, I've done a lot of work on boats under shrink wrap, and you want to make sure there's ventilation. So there are ways. Then once the season comes to an end, you're just cutting holes in it everywhere.
Yeah. Interesting.
Do you know anyone who has a larger dog on board? And how do they get them into the boat? Like not on the boat seems easier, but down into the cabin seems much harder.
So there are a lot of animals at the marina. There are big dogs. I'm not good with breeds. I can't. But large dogs. I know that some people have usually a larger boat than I do, where their steps aren't quite as steep as mine. People also typically keep a harness on their animal. Like I have a harness for my cat, but where you can kind of help them up and down. Also, people have, those infomercials for like the doggy steps for your bed. People have those on their boats too, or whatever. The dogs that I've taken care of for friends or whatnot have all been small enough, medium sized, where I can physically carry them down. So I'm not sure, aside from having your entryway.
I may have an 85-pound golden retriever on my hands. I'm kind of wondering about like a pulley system to like sort of let them down.
Well, get a life jacket for the overboard times.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. And if you have something to lift your dinghy engine off, it's a great way to get the dog back on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have some davits. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Animals tend to
That's
adapt
gonna be
pretty quickly, I found. So just training them to like wait
Yeah.
and not try to jump on when there's too much space, you know, or but you can usually get your boat close enough to the dock where, especially for a bigger dog, it wouldn't be that hard for them to step on. And then the rest I'm not entirely sure.
I have one more question too. What is it like to be a woman on your own, as I am on a liveaboard, as a liveaboard? I've noticed that I'm the only one in the Charlestown Marina. There may be one other woman, but I have not met her yet. But
yeah, the first thing I was going to say was I find it pretty empowering. And, I think that, how should I say this? It's definitely a different experience being a woman living on a boat by herself. That said, I feel a lot safer just based off of the community. Like I know,
right.
I don't worry about things I think I might worry about if I wasn't living in the marina. And people tend to, are pretty respectful. I've been really lucky. I haven't had any negative experiences except maybe with, you know, some people visiting boats, other women who, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking more about there's a lot of mansplaining and trying to figure out like sort of what man explaining to trust and how to trust yourself instead. And I've been pretty good at trusting myself and I've done okay, but there's a lot of sort of self-doubt that occurs. And because there's so many opinions and they are very divergent, and I'm like, but I think I know how to do this and I have a good idea, and they're often like, no, like you're screwed, Gigi, like
Yeah,
like often they're not very
it's totally, you know, I've had some people, some men that have been really, really helpful. I've also, with my engine, for example, every man at my marina has an opinion on what is wrong, what should be fixed, what I should do next. Some of that's been really helpful, some of that has been less helpful. I have a lot of other resources I use, though, like Women Who Sail, the Facebook group. Women Who Own Boats Solely Without Men is another Facebook group.
Oh, let me write that down.
Yeah.
Women Who Sail Without Men, is that what it's called?
Women Who Own Boats Solely Without Men is the so those resources can be helpful. And then if you know your neighbors, you know who to ask for help and set boundaries. If someone's offering advice that I don't want, I'm pretty quick to say, like, not today. Like,
right. Exactly. Right.
But yeah, you're in the minority, but it's like, what a great place to be to inspire other people to do
I know, exactly. I'm really excited about being in the minority in this way, and it is really fun to try to find a way to trust yourself.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it takes me a couple of days to get up the courage to like resurface a winch, sort of like,
well, that's,
I don't know whether that's your experience where you feel like you have to rev yourself up to developing the courage to approach different things. And
yeah, I'm afraid of everything all the time, but say yes, you know, when you're like offered opportunity, like someone will be like, oh, will you climb in this little hole for me, or will you go up the mast? And you know, I'm like, or even this, like speaking about living aboard, I was nervous about, but you know, you don't learn until you try. And
Gigi, how many liveaboards are there on Charlestown Marina?
I'm not 100% sure because I'm in the summer season, and so I'm not sure how many people live aboard in the wintertime. But it's a lot less than the Constitution Marina.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's pretty new, you know, reopened. How well protected are you there? Because it seems like it's more exposed coming down the river, the harbor?
I feel really protected, but we wind up moving all of the boats to an even more protected area of the marina. So we're all kind of condensed in the wintertime. So I'm not really sure how that's going to go.
And what's your boat?
What is it?
Yeah.
It's a 36 Mark II Pearson.
Oh, that's right. Mark II Pearson. You said that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's in pretty good shape. She's a 1986, but she has a 2010 Yanmar engine.
Which engine?
Which one?
Which one? Yanmar.
3YM something.
Like a
30 horsepower.
30 horsepower.
30 horsepower, yeah.
Good engine.
And I've already taken out the alternator, repaired it, and put it back in. And so I feel like I am learning a lot about the engine. I'm terrified of the plumbing.
It's
Trying
one
to face
item
my
at a
fears
time.
about that. Yeah. So my joker valve is like next, nuts.
You can do it. You can do it. Wear gloves.
Okay.
Allie, I can ask a question. Can you hear me? Okay. I really thank you very much for taking the adventure just to share your experience with us. I really appreciate that. It's awesome to hear what you have to say. You've mentioned 2 different authors that you reference for repairs and what to do when you have problems. I thought I heard Don Casey, if that's correct.
Mhm.
And what was the other gentleman's name that you mentioned?
Nigel Calder.
Oh, thank you. Calder. Okay.
Yeah, I can give there Charlie Doan is also another good resource. John Krashmer, but he's more for sailing. Well, no, he's good at explaining repairs as well. Bernard Moitissier.
I know Bostonians are not always good for their enunciations. You know, we have a wee bit of a slang here. So if you could pass along some of those technical information to Chris, and then he can share it with the group so we have the right spellings. Because first of all, I can't spell to save my life, but I know I always mishear how things are pronounced in Boston. So I would appreciate if you could pass those along.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. They've been really helpful.
It was great to hear from you, Allie. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jeannie, I think if you get Sail Magazine and Cruising World Magazine, some of those, the names that Allie mentioned are
Pretty
they contribute there all the time, and they really, the names she mentioned are wonderful people.
Oh, good. Thank you.
How about people who didn't speak earlier that could introduce themselves and maybe make a comment to, or people did speak earlier, and make a comment and introduce yourself and maybe ask Allie.
Before we get there, any more questions for Allie?
Yes. Allie, can we hang out for a little bit?
Absolutely. When I get
Just a tiny bit.
when I get back from, I'm actually in Mexico right now. When I get back,
Oh, fun.
sort of fun. I've had a ear infection, but yeah. Once I'm done quarantining, when I get back.
Good.
Well, thank you so much. This was really great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Allie.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I have one more question. There was a brief discussion of heat and carbon monoxide, et cetera. What do you think of the heat options and what are you using?
So I use electric, and I make sure that I have the ones that if they tip over will automatically shut off. It's important. A lot of people use diesel heaters, which I think are a really great option, especially if you have a diesel engine. I'd stay away from propane. That's kind of, just see how comfortable you feel with that. The carbon monoxide thing that's really important to be aware of. My poisoning experience was because we got a knockoff heater, knockoff for Basto, and installed it ourselves, and it wasn't properly insulated. The what's it called? The exhaust was not properly insulated, and you can have carbon monoxide detectors, but if it's a low enough amount over a long enough period of time, it won't set off the alarm, which is what happened to me. I was inside for like 8 hours, and yeah, so didn't have any of the symptoms either, no headache, no whatever, and just passed out without. So I think just being aware of the fact that like sometimes the detector might not detect it. I always try to, whenever I'm running any kind of heat source, I have something cracked open a little bit. And I have the Nest carbon monoxide detector, which I like, probably just because her voice is very nice.
Okay, thank you.
The smoke on your boat or whatever. But it's also great to be able to, if you live in a house and you want to monitor your boat, you can have updates sent. There's a bunch of different devices for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ellie, I believe that there was it last year that there was a fire incident where several boats caught fire?
Yeah.
What happened there?
So I wasn't at the marina at the time, but I do know enough about it. I became friends with the guy who was the insurance agent for the woman whose boat started the fire. I believe it was a power strip that had too many things plugged into it, which is a common thing that you really need to be aware of. Also a lack of experience, and it's not to point fingers, but with anything electrical, you should always have someone else double check it if you don't really know what you're doing. So I believe that the strip had too much going into it, it sparked, and because it was winter, the reason so many boats were damaged is because the shrink wrap caught on fire. So someone's shrink wrap caught on fire, and then the next boats, and the next boats, and yeah, luckily nobody was injured, but we did lose some boats.
And I also heard that I don't know if it's Constitution or the Charlestown, but that complex is one of the largest marina complexes in the country. And so this community that you may take for granted is a very unique, special thing, and you won't find it everywhere. So
yes, I agree with that. No, I definitely recognize that it is a unique community and not found everywhere. I've lived at Charlestown Marina also. I've lived at the East Boston Shipyard Marina. I've lived on a mooring at Jeffrey's Yacht Club. I've found that for some reason Constitution has been able to maintain, even though obviously a part of living aboard is people are constantly coming and going, this sort of tight-knit community that welcomes the new people and, wishes well to everyone who goes south, the lucky ones.
Excellent. Well, if there's no more further questions, Allie, I'd like to once again thank you for putting together this presentation and answering a plethora of questions at the end, and particularly finding somehow to make it happen while you're out in Mexico on your vacation on land for the first time in multiple years, being off your boat. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort, and have a wonderful evening out there in Mexico. Try and be safe.
Thank you very much. It was really nice
Thank you, Ellie.
everyone.
Thanks, Ally, and you're certainly welcome to hang on. We're going to probably chat here, or if you want to take off, that's cool too.
I can hang on for a little bit.
Okay, yeah, either way.